One of the things I have now learned is the left lives in a fantasy of oppression and heroism, right? Two clowns get thrown out of a Starbucks and black people are oppressed. Black people are not oppressed in America. Black people are not oppressed in America just because two guys get thrown out of Starbucks or for any other reason. Some woman gets chased around the desk at work, and that's sad, and I'm sorry that happens. Women are not oppressed in America. Women are not oppressed in America. And the press gets criticized for distorting the facts and having an open animus toward Republicans and toward Donald Trump. And they think that they are oppressed. Now, the problem is this is all fantasy. The press is as free as it can possibly be in America. There's no threat to the First Amendment, except maybe from the people who riot when right-wing speakers come to campuses. Maybe that's a threat to the First Amendment. Maybe Google and Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, creating algorithms that destroy conservative businesses and bury conservative speech. Maybe those people are being oppressed. Maybe that's an attack on the First Amendment. But it is not a criticism. It is not an attack on the First Amendment for reporters to be attacked and criticized for what they are in fact doing, which is delivering biased fake news. So the problem is if you think you're oppressed, genuinely oppressed people have a right to do certain things that the rest of us don't have a right to do. Oppressed people can fight back. Oppressed people can treat their enemies like oppressors and like enemies. But if you're just here living in America where you're not oppressed, to do that makes you a lowlife. And so the press got caught in the Trump effect over the weekend, and it made me laugh. I chuckled like an evil villain in an evil chuckling movie. I did, because they got caught in the Trump effect. The Trump effect is where people try to imitate Trump's kind of bullying, brash style, but instead they find themselves under attack for being bullies and being, lowlifes. And the reason that happens is because Trump is actually reacting to something that happens. He's bullying bullies. But when the press acts like bullies, they're just acting the way they always do. These are the people who told us that Mitt Romney was a murderer, who told us that George W. Bush was a liar. These are the people who attack, Donald Trump for moving a Martin Luther King statue in the Oval Office when he didn't, and then say, oh, it was just a mistake. It was an innocent mistake. So when they do it, it becomes ridiculous. So you have to, you have to take a look at this White House Correspondents' Dinner. And I don't want to overblow this because it was a funny week last week where a lot of cultural stuff was coming up with Kanye West. And, sometimes right-wingers are silly about the culture. They do not understand the culture, so they don't understand why it's important when Kanye West stands up and stands with the president. It's important because it shows that it can be done. You don't have to back down. You can be black and a Republican. You can be black and like Donald Trump. All those things are possible. It shows that. It doesn't make Kanye West a great artist. Doesn't make him a great philosopher. It doesn't even mean you have to like his music. I've never even heard the only time I've heard a Kanye West lyric is when Knowles is telling me what's in the lyric to his songs. That's for a long time I thought Knowles and Kanye West were the same people. You never see them together. And they both recite his lyrics. So I figured Kanye West and Michael Knowles were in fact the same person. But in fact, I know it's important, and there's nothing wrong with celebrating the fact that Kanye West is showing people that you can be courageous and stand up for yourself, and you don't have to be Hank Azaria and back down. You don't have to be Shania Twain and back down. That's important. So this dinner was important because it showed, again, a press living in a fantasy of oppression and heroism that gives them the right to do things they shouldn't do. But because it's a fantasy, when they get caught in the reality of it, it just makes them look as awful as they are. Let's start, first of all, Donald Trump. He's so much smarter than they are. I mean, just in terms, I don't even know if IQ is a fair measurement of intelligence. All I know is if Donald Trump is not smarter than our reporters, then it's even worse because he just keeps outsmarting them. So they're being outsmarted by somebody who's not as smart as they are. He went to Washington, Michigan, right? He said, would you rather be in Washington, D.C. or Washington, Michigan? And made a speech about them and made them look utterly absurd. So here is just a quick cut of Trump, cut number 13, talking about this dinner that's going on Saturday night in Washington, D.C., of the press celebrating themselves and creating their little fantasy of how oppressed and heroic they are. And here's Donald Trump just making fun of them.
Remember the exit polls? The exit polls, they come out. Who did you vote for? None of your business. 100% those people are for Trump. We love those people. We love them. We love those people. You know, there was a mayor of a certain city. By the way, is this better than that phony Washington White House correspondence? Is this more fun? I could be up there tonight smiling like I love where they're hitting you shot after shot. These people, they hate your guts. Shot. And then I'm supposed to... And you know, you got to smile. And if you don't smile, they'll say, he was terrible, he couldn't take it. And if you do smile, they'll say, what was he smiling about? You know, there's no win.
Do they look like they're having fun? Of course they look like they're having fun. Meanwhile, they're showing up at the dinner, and CNN is covering the red carpet as if anybody gave a rat's caboose about what is happening at the White House Correspondence Center. The CNN is covering this like it's the red carpet. And who's their biggest star? The guy, the lawyer who represents the porn star, Stormy Daniels. Listen to this. This is a red carpet interview on CNN as if they're going to the Oscars. At least people watch the movies. People don't even watch CNN, but they're covering this, and their big star is the guy who represents Stormy Daniels. Listen to this.
And obviously we see you there with Michael Avenatti, the attorney for Stormy Daniels. Yes, Poppy, that's right. Probably one of the biggest stars we have at this dinner tonight. Certainly one of the most controversial, of course. This is Michael Avenatti, the lawyer for Stormy Daniels, the woman who is suing President Trump, of course. Welcome to the dinner. This is your first Correspondence Dinner?
Yes, it is.
So you are here, but President Trump is not, of course, for the second year in a row. The first president to not attend the dinner since Ronald Reagan, who, of course, skipped the dinner because he was suffering from a gunshot wound. What do you think about the president not attending this freedom, this toast to the press freedom 2 years in a row?
Well, as you know, I just call it like I see it, and I think it's entirely disrespectful. I think it's disrespectful to the First Amendment. I think it's disrespectful to the Constitution. I think it's disrespectful to one of the founding principles that this nation was founded on. If you can't laugh at yourself, you have no business being in the position, quite honestly. And I don't know why he's hiding tonight. The only excuse that is good enough for me is if he's getting ready for his next Fox and Friends appearance.
If you don't have an excuse good enough for Stormy Daniels' lawyer, then you're really in a sad state of... I mean, it's an offense against the First Amendment, says this clown, because he didn't go to watch them celebrate themselves and attack him viciously. So this is an insult to the First Amendment, and this is what's going on. Let me just stop for a minute before we get to this Michelle Wolf comedian and the stuff she said. There was a briefing at the State Department the other day, right? This is last week. And they put out this report on countries' human rights practices, right? So we're talking about places where people are being raped and tortured, children are being killed and murdered, people are being thrown in prison. You're a journalist in those countries. It's like you raise your hand to ask a question, they just cut your hand off and throw you away, right? And the Associated Press's Mike Lee says to the State Department's Michael Kozak, he says, how can you represent freedom of the press when you are attacking us wonderful, heroic reporters? Just listen to this quick exchange. This is 16.
How are you do not open yourself up to charges of hypocrisy, and how effective do you think you can be at leading by example? Thank you.
Okay, let's see if I can remember each one of those. But I think as you go through the reports, you'll see the countries that we criticize for limiting press freedom. It's for things like having criminal libel laws where you can be put in jail for what you say. It's for things like yanking the licenses of media outlets you don't like, or in many cases, killing the journalists. So I think we make quite a distinction between political leaders being able to speak out and say that story was not accurate, or using even stronger words sometimes, and using state power to prevent the journalists from continuing to do their work.
This guy has to explain to the Associated Press the difference between being criticized because your coverage is unfair and being murdered for telling the truth. He's got to explain this to people. I mean, it really is like these guys who got tossed out of Starbucks. It's the same fantasy. They're all living in this fantasy of an oppression and heroism that gives them the right to do awful things to other people who are not doing anything. It's like, really, I mean, there were slaves in this country. Once this guy gets thrown out of Starbucks and it's like, swing low, sweet chariot. I mean, come on, you got it good. This is good here, and the press is dealing with a president who fights back. Too bad. So this goes on into the dinner, right? They go into the dinner and the president of the Correspondence Dinner Association makes a speech in which she compares what they're doing there to the people who are actually in the room who were thrown into prison. This is cut number 3.
But we reject efforts by anyone, especially our elected leaders, to paint journalism as un-American, to undermine trust between reporter and reader, or to cast doubt on the relevance of facts and truth in the modern age. An attack on any journalist is an attack on us all. This really isn't about the business of protecting journalism as a business. In fact, our business has all done pretty well in the last couple of years. It is about protecting a pillar of American democracy. The best leaders and public servants champion the First Amendment, even when the scrutiny is turned on them, and defend it at home and proclaim it overseas because they know that that helps democracy and freedom take root in places where violence, repression, and fear give cover to terrorism and corruption. I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to remember journalists around the world killed for doing their jobs or who are alive but imprisoned.
So we go right from them. She says we don't have it's a terrible thing when they sow distrust between a reporter and his readers, right? I mean, this is basically what we should have. I love my country. I distrust my government. I love the First Amendment. I distrust the press because the press lies. They distort things. They're all on one side. We see how much they hate Donald Trump. We saw before they hated Donald Trump, they hated George W. Bush just as much. And they were just as nasty to Mitt Romney. So now they're going to tell us, oh, yeah, but this time the wolf is at the door. We can see what he's doing. I mean, we see he's an obstreperous big character with a lot of personal flaws. We see he has personal failings. But he's doing a pretty good job, actually. He's just about to end the Korean War, possibly get Kim Jong-un to give up some of those nuclear weapons. Maybe that'll happen. But it's like, all they do is assault him in this unfair way. And then they say, oh, we're the victims here. And then she goes right into, after talking about being criticized, she goes right into a moment of silence for people who are actually suffering because she is living in that fantasy that they're oppressed and they're heroes. So that gives them the right to have this comedian come on and do what she did. And they're trying to distance themselves from her, but they are her. She knew that room. She knew what they wanted to hear, and she gave it to them, and they got caught. And for a while, before people started to react, they were saying, wow, she really destroyed Donald Trump. Wow, she really CNN in real time was changing its opinion as the results came. Maybe she went, she destroyed Donald. Well, maybe she went too far. Well, it was a disgusting, performance. Let's listen a little bit to some of the stuff she did. The personal attacks on Sarah Sanders. She's not the first person to do this, attacking her for her looks, attacking her as a liar. It's an absolute personal attack. And Sarah Sanders is sitting there, who's a really classy lady. I mean, she is, I would not have handled this with as much class. She handled this with absolute class, absolutely, raised her stock with, I think, anybody who was paying attention. But listen to the nastiness of this.
And of course, we have Sarah Huckabee Sanders. We are graced with Sarah's presence tonight. I have to say, I'm a little starstruck. I love you as Aunt Lydia on The Handmaid's Tale. Mike Pence, if you haven't seen it, you would love it. Every time Sarah steps up to the podium, I get excited because I'm not really sure what we're going to get. A press briefing, a bunch of lies, or divided into softball teams. It's shirts and skins, and this time don't be such a little Jim Acosta. I actually really like Sarah. I think she's very resourceful. Like, she burns facts, and then she uses that ash to create a perfect smoky eye. Like, maybe she's born with it. Maybe it's lies. It's probably lies. And I'm really sure what to call Sarah Huckabee Sanders. You know, is it Sarah Sanders? Is it Sarah Huckabee Sanders? Is it Cousin Huckabee? Is it Auntie Huckabee Sanders? Like, what's Uncle Tom but for white women who disappoint other white women? Oh, I know, Aunt Coulter.
Wow. I mean, really, really nasty personal stuff. And make no mistake, they were laughing. You could hear them laughing. Anything they said afterward came afterward. She is them. They are her. And I know that's not grammatically correct, but it is true. They are the same person. She knew exactly the room she was playing. And here's the thing. What the left hates is they hate being caught out being who they are. Why doesn't it touch Trump when he does this? It doesn't touch Trump because he is who he is. He has always been the same person. He is a product of the culture the left created. It's the left in the 60s that introduced vulgarity. It's the left in the 60s that made it okay to say the things that people say now on TV and in public. And Trump is a product of that. He was created. He is like Godzilla. You know, they set off the atom bomb that destroyed our culture. He's the monster that came out. And now when they stoop to that, they're the ones who have pretended all this time, you know, they're guys. Joe Biden goes and says Republicans want to put black people back in chains. Nobody even takes a pause. Nobody says a word. That's fine. That's fine. But if Donald Trump says the crowd at his inaugural was bigger, that's a lie. You know, than it was. That's a lie. You know, and so she goes on. And this was, to me, the most telling joke she made. She went after Mike Pence. And I don't know what it is about Pence that drives these people crazy, that he's too decent, that he's polite, that he's a Christian, that he believes in God, that he follows his creed. You know, what is it about Mike Pence that just sets them off? It's that he's better than they are. It's that he's a better human being than they are. And they can't stand it. That he oppresses them by being better than them. So she starts to go after him. But listen to what she starts joking about here.
A lot of people want Trump to be impeached. I do not. Because just when you think Trump is awful, you remember Mike Pence. Mike Pence is what happens when Anderson Cooper isn't gay. Mike Pence is the kind of guy that brushes his teeth and then drinks orange juice and thinks, Mike Pence is also very anti-choice. He thinks abortion is murder, which, first of all, don't knock it till you try it. And when you do try it, really knock it. You know, you got to get that baby out of there.
God. So she's making jokes about killing babies. That's who they are. And that's who they are. And by the way, I just want to point out that during that cut, if you couldn't see that, Roger Zelazny, the former New York Times, now CNN reporter, who asked Barack Obama whether he was charmed and delighted to be president. That was his big question. How enchanted are you to be president? Zelazny comes out later on. Jeff Zelazny comes out. I called him Roger. Jeff Zelazny, right? He comes out and he says, oh, she went too far. Here's cut 15.
I thought the jokes were one-sided, not necessarily funny, but she was invited by the White House Correspondents Association. So, you know, I think that this dinner has had a lot of bad moments. I was thinking back last evening as I was watching this cringeworthy performance in some respects going after the appearance of Sarah Sanders, which I thought was inappropriate and not funny. You know, the weapons of mass destruction video from the Bush administration where people were climbing around the floor of the Oval Office looking for the WMD, also not funny. So it's not the first time there have been awkward moments. But look, I think the president wins. He goes out to Washington, a township of Michigan, far away from this. The press has done a lot of incredible work this year here at CNN, of course, the Washington Post, New York Times, other places. A lot of that was, I think, overtaken by a skit that wasn't very funny. And we sometimes celebrate ourselves too much, I think. The reality is it's a important job. And last night, I don't think we lived up to it.
So just remember the cut before. He's out there. He's laughing at those jokes about Pence. All this stuff. You know, this thing with Joy Reid, I'm going to end with this. This thing with Joy Reid kind of sums up what's happening with these people, because they live in this fantasy. They live in this fantasy that they're heroes, they're oppressed. They're not oppressed. They're not heroes. They're just biased Democrats. They're just Democrats with press cards. That's all they are. They're Democrat spokesmen with press cards. They've been doing the same thing for 20 years. Trump has finally had the temerity to talk to them openly about it, to call them openly what they are, and they are scattering, and they're now suffering from the Trump effect, where the only thing they could do to fight back against Trump is to become Trump, and it doesn't look good on them. This is the way Trump destroys people. He turns them into the image of themselves, but that just reveals what hypocrites they are, because Trump hasn't been a hypocrite. But Joy Reid was found to have put out on an old blog gay jokes, the stuff about people being gay and attacking politicians for being gay. They caught her out on it. Some guy on Twitter caught her out on it. She says, "Oh, that's not me. I was hacked. I was hacked." And then I think the FBI actually investigated this, but they found out she wasn't hacked. It was her. She was making these jokes. And Joy Reid is shocked to discover that she's Joy Reid. Joy Reid is just shocked that she is herself, okay? She comes on TV and she says, somebody has to pay. I can't believe that I'm me, that I wrote these things. Listen to it.
A community that I support and that I deeply care about is hurting because of some despicable and truly offensive posts being attributed to me. Now, many of you have seen these blog posts circulating online and in social media. Many of them are homophobic, discriminatory, and outright weird and hateful. When a friend found them in December and sent them to me, I was stunned. Frankly, I couldn't imagine where they'd come from or whose voice that was. In the months since, I've spent a lot of time trying to make sense of these posts. I hired cybersecurity experts to see if somebody had manipulated my words or my former blog. And the reality is they have not been able to prove it. But here's what I know. I genuinely do not believe I wrote those hateful things because they are completely alien to me. But I can definitely understand, based on things I have tweeted and have written in the past, why some people don't believe me.
It was evil, Joy Reid. It's like, what kind of an excuse is that? I wrote these things, but I can't believe it, and I'm shocked, and I will take this up with myself immediately. My only point about this is that only Joy Reid is shocked to discover that she's Joy Reid. Only the press was shocked to wake up the next morning and find we didn't think they were funny. We thought they were low. We thought they were mean. We think that they're dishonest. The polls continually show that people don't trust them. Only the press is shocked by this because they are living in a fantasy. It's the left wing's fantasy of oppression and heroism, and it's simply not real. And when they get caught and when we see them, we know it's not real, and they're shocked to find out that they're themselves.